Here. Thank you. We do have a revised agenda this evening. The Housing Authority appointment went from formal actions down to resolutions. So that's what the changes if you haven't already picked up on that. So if you'd stand with me for the invocation. Heavenly Father, be with us this evening and give us guidance to perform our business and be with our country and our fellow citizens as they are over in Afghanistan, and give them safe passage, and to our military, protect them, and be with our local law enforcement, and be with our youth as they've gone back to school and activities are starting, and give them success as we move forward. In your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tony, you made a good flag this evening.
Yeah, I did. It's red, red by the flag.
Todd, do you have anything?
I do not, thanks, Mark.
Jamie?
I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't have anything, so we'll just, Katie, do you have anything at this time?
No, not other than what we're gonna talk about later, so.
Okay, thank you. Jason, we'll turn the meeting over to you.
All right, I'll provide a couple of updates and keep it moving along. Sports complex, we made a lot of progress on that. The field relocation, as I like to call it. So we have the electrical in, so it's all been conduited around, and of course that's the deepest layer. And then we have all the water sprinkler systems in the outfield, so that's kind of the next layer. So kind of letting that settle and jet in and those types of things. And our goal is to get it seeded in the next 7 to 14 days. So it's kind of the seeding window for it. And that's really our phase one goal. Just really got to get it seeded and get the water to get to germinate and to pop up. So make sure we get it fertilized and the right things. So we're getting some help with that. So should be exciting. The crew got the area where that pipe's going to go in. You approved that, but we did just fill it in and get it packed in there. So we'll just dig that trench fresh when that pipe does come in. But otherwise, I think we're making good progress and feel like we're on schedule. We did some demo on the other side of the street, so it's pretty exciting. Solar farm update. I did get an update from Rick. A couple of big things that we've had to do. Obviously, another one is the Alta survey. So an Alta survey is kind of really in full depth review, legal review. It's I don't know what all's in there. Stuart, could you give us the best description of an Alta survey?
It's a very comprehensive survey. So an Alta survey has property information, topographic information in it, easements of record. There's a title search. It's basically everything that
would affect that property.
That property consists of elevation wise, floodplain wise. Zoning requirements, just all of that stuff.
It's basically what their engineering side of things needs to be able to get the final product into the ground. If you remember, I reported the last couple of meetings. They've been meeting with the different SPP, those things. So the last one they met with was Sunflower, so that's who has a high voltage line up north of town. So they just had a couple pretty normal questions, but no roadblocks there. So they feel pretty good about it. We answered some of those today, actually. The bad news front is just, which we've said, I think it's impacted them probably more and more, it's just the global supply shortage of everything. It's just really hurting them, so that's really their focus right now. So kind of like everything, it's hurry up and wait. I'd love to have it in the ground, but on the flip side, we're not really missing too much, right now, because it's kind of in those fall months. But they brought on a guy on their team, John McReynolds, is going to be kind of their solar engineer design guy. He's had a lot of experience, worked on 14 of the 17 projects that Rick's done, so that'll be added expertise. So I think once they get all the clean, finished up and Sunflower happy and acquire the materials, they'll get it built. So I'm super excited about it. It's just never happened. But that's a lot of things right now. If you order anything, it's just hurry up and wait. So, but that's all I know right now on the solar farm. Highway 14, we did get 2 bids today. Kind of getting the location and size of the project's always a tough one with this. I know Schwab worked the phones pretty hard to make sure we got some good bids. We got a bid from APAC and Hall Brothers, so two of the bigger probably players, especially in this area, bid on it. Kind of, if you'll remember when we talked about it, as the scope of the project moved on, there's more patching. We expected it to be a little bit over the initial engineer's estimate, that initial grant amount, but nothing substantial. We had one that was really high, and then one that was, just a little bit higher than what we were that original engineer's estimate. So we're going to figure out what that full impact is, bring it back to you guys on September 1. I think just from what the numbers I was crunching in my head, and it's $300,000 to $400,000 worth of road work. Put a little bit more skin in the game. It's probably well worth it to probably fix the problem for the next, hopefully 15 plus years or so. So it's not going to get any better. So anyways, we'll get more on that. Again, I think just like everybody, it's just upheaval in the market and the prices and everything like that. So Morris Memorial Airport project. Hopefully you've been out there or driven by it. There's a lot of earthwork going on out there. It's kind of surprised at just how much earthwork's going on, especially on that north end. But it just shows you how probably out of tune that was, and getting that fixed and resolved. I think they've got a lot of the shoulder work done on the airport runway. That was the biggest issue. A lot of 4 to 6 inch drop off, so that's getting resolved. We've also driven by the main entrance area. Our city guys have done some work. They've torn out some really old, nasty chain link fence. We got a plan to kind of put that back and make it look really nice when it's done. But we've also, that front nasty piece of asphalt chip seal in front of that old stone hangar all ripped out and formed up actually right now. So it looks like they're getting pretty close to pouring. So it's going to look really nice as far as an entrance, and that's kind of one of our goals. Is we got a nice airport, make it look nice when you drive in. So then of course remember they're going to do all the crack sealing for the tarmac too. So they've been going at it for about a week and a half, 2 weeks now, and I couldn't tell. I think it's I want to say the 30 working day contract, so they probably got 2 or 3 weeks left to get her done. So, and that's all I've got. So I'll turn it over to Craig for our 2020 audit report. So I think he's got on the table for you. Of course, we put it in the packet, and we'll go from there. So thank you.
September 1st, the deadline on the
For the Highway 14?
Yeah.
No, the bid opening was today. So they still have to tabulate. So we already got the bids. The engineer just has to tabulate them, put them in a report, and then basically council action will be September 1st.
Okay, there are the two bound packets there. The thicker one is the actual audit report, so let's just get a couple highlights on the thicker one real quick. If you open up that and get past the table of contents, you'll come to the main letter. And really in the main letter, we just like to point out that the responsibility of these financial statements that you see here are the responsibility of the management, city of Lloyd. And the auditor responsibility, we're responsible for giving an opinion on the financial statements. So we just like to clarify what our duties are in this engagement. If you flip it over to the next page, it would be the third bold paragraph that says unmodified opinion on regulatory basis of accounting. Just as a reminder, you opt out of GAAP each year, and then that allows you to be on the cash basis of accounting. So this is where the actual opinion is from the auditors. In our opinion, the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. So that's what you want to see in that paragraph there, in our opinion there. We'll get into the financial part here. If you go over to page 4 and 5, this is a summary. This is the actual financial statement summary of all the different funds. There's a column called the ending unencumbered cash balance column. And just one thing to note there, that column is all positive numbers, and that's what you want to see there. That means there's no cash basis violations. On page 5 is the totals of all the funds. And I guess it's just a note that there is about a $500,000 increase from last year's unencumbered cash balance to this year's unencumbered cash balance. And we'll hit a couple of the highlighted numbers here coming up as we go through this. This financial statement has no disclosures attached to it to help you understand them a little better. So if you turn over, we'll just hit a couple of these, which is page 8. One of the things we checked on the very last paragraph on page 8 is we do check that all of the money held in the banks are properly secured. And so this last paragraph on page 8 states that they are properly secured. So it's one of the big things that we do check. If you flip over to page 10, this is a required note disclosure about the Capers net pension liability. You don't have any control over it, but it's something that has to be disclosed each and every year. And so under the underlying heading, net pension liability, you'll see two numbers in there. One of them is for the city's portion of the net pension liability of Capers, and one of them is for the library. And I will tell you that the net pension liability did increase about $440,000 for the city and about $16,500 for the library. So it kind of went in the wrong direction this year. It was on a trend going down, and it did go up this year for whatever reason.
Craig, who calculates? Is that the state that puts that out, what that liability is, and that's that what makes that happen?
Yeah, it's actually Capers. They have an audit firm on them, which gives it their opinion on what the actual liability is. And so that's shared by whoever participates in Capers, and you just get to disclose it in your note disclosure. So. The last one, note disclosure, if you go to page 12, we did, on the subsequent events, we did make mention of the solar farm. Again, there wasn't much to really state here in this note disclosure. It's just something to point out for the reader that at the time of this audit report, there wasn't anything done on the solar farm as far as that's concerned, as you just heard here. Page 13 and 14 is your debt. 13, 14, and 15 actually. Page 13 is basically the summary of all the debt. A couple things to point out. There was a new debt for 2020, the fairground land, which is paid back at $50,000 a year. That's on the very bottom of the schedule. Right below that, there is a disclaimer about the KDHE loan. At the time this audit report is, the agreement was signed and there was a loan schedule for the KDHE loan, but there were no draws on that loan during 2020. So that's why it's just down there as a note disclosure. Nothing else really to state. You're welcome to look through page 14 and 15 to see the remaining debt payments in the years that it spans out. But that's just a summary for you to take a look at. If you go to page 16, page 16 is just a summary of the expenditures compared to the budget. You'll see on page 16 on the far right-hand column, all of those numbers are negative. That's what you want to see there. That means there's no budget violations during the year. All expenditures were under the budget. We'll get a couple numbers here. 18 on is the individual funds. And it always starts with the general fund and goes through all the other funds. We won't go through too much detail on this, but it is a couple things to point out. General fund is your first one. There's quite a few numbers on there. But really, I just like to point out the general fund. My notes here. There we go. Okay. Real quick about the tax revenue that comes in, and a lot of it comes in the general, but you also have the employee benefit fund, the library, the tax revenues come in. Overall, for all the tax, and this includes the special assessments and the neighborhood revitalization, there was a $3,000 increase in tax, but again, you throw in special assessments, which actually went down. The tax revenue really was actually more than that. So, but just with special assessments, the overall was only about $3,000 more than was the previous year. On the cash receipts, again, we're still on page 17 under the first heading, taxes and shared revenue. It's always good to kind of take a look at your local sales tax, see how that's doing. They went from 456,000 to 511,000. That's on page 17 under taxes and shared revenue. If you turn over to page 18, the only number I'm going to point out here is under the interest and other, the interest. It did go way down this year, and just from the bank statements that we noted when we were auditing, that the interest rate went from 2.77 to at one point it was down to 0.325. So it was a pretty big drop on interest revenue, and that's the reason why. Last one, go to page 20. I always like to point out a few capital outlay expenditures here. So on the North Campus, there is a $60,000 expense in capital outlay, and that is the annual payment for the HVAC agreement with USD 273. So that's what that 60,000 is from. A couple other expenditures to always kind of take a look at is page 22. Your employee benefits fund. Under the expenditures, medical insurance is the first one listed. When we were auditing the health insurance, there was, for a single health insurance plan, there was an 11% increase, which started in September of 2020. And so you'll see an increase here, and of course, most of that will occur in 2021. So you'd expect to see an increase there also in medical insurance. Page 23. The capital outlay listed under the equipment reserve, there was quite a few things, various things that went in there, but there were also 2 mowers. So I won't go through any more of the detail on that. There was a lot of smaller expenditures in that category. Moving over to page 25, special highway fund. Again, we're looking at the capital outlay expenditures. The amount in there was the street sweeper lease payment for the capital outlay account. Page 28. This is where the fire truck lease is paid out of the fire equipment fund. So nothing to mention there. It's just your payment each year. So the fire truck lease is paid out of there. I think I had, oh yeah, if you want to turn to page 34, we won't go through, there's quite a few expenditures in here too. This is the capital improvement fund on page 34. Again, there were a lot of things going into these expenses, so I won't go through all the detail, but there were 2 projects that were a little bit larger, and that was the HVAC project, and there was an 8th Street project in there. That went into some of the expenses here in this category. If you turn to page 36, this is where you get into your utility revenue. So I would like to point out the revenue in the utilities. You can see from the previous year to the current, or 2020, from 19 to 2020, the electric revenue did decrease by quite a bit. Decreased by about $370,000. When we were auditing, we did notice that the consumption was less than it was the previous year, and also the cost rate adjustment that is used to calculate the rates for consumers was also dropped. So that related to the drop in sales. There was a decrease in expenditures also, just to kind of point out there on the expenditures. On page 37 is just a continuation, but page 38 is the water fund. The water fund revenue increased, and a good portion of this was due to the Rural Water District number 3, and that actually started June of 2020 is what we have in our records when that started. They started buying water from you. And I think page 39 was just to point out there's not much change in the water pollution control. And on page 40, again, that should stay the same because it's the same contract each year. So nothing to really change there. And then the last couple of pages is the cemetery endowment, which is just an agency fund that the city does the bookwork for, and then the library right after that. So those are really the highlights of the financial statement. We do have a letter that we always address to the council, which is a smaller packet. And really, there's not a whole lot to say in this letter. These letters are kind of form letters as long as everything goes good. So if you open this up and you get to the first letter, I will point out just a couple of things. Since Mandy prepares the financial statements herself, we didn't have any adjustments to recommend, so everything that she prepared, we agreed with, and looks good, and we gave a good opinion on that. So there are no corrections to report to you. There were no disagreements with management, no issues with the audit. So everything ran really smooth. We did have one recommendation on the second page of that letter, and it's toward the bottom. It's under expenditure controls, and this is just a recommendation that there is a signature line on the expenditure form that we noticed that there was a few times they were not signed. And so as approval, just to show that they have been reviewed and approved, we are recommending that signature be on there for each expenditure. And that's really the only recommendation we had. So again, very clean audit, nothing really to report to you other than that one recommendation. I'll stick around if anyone has any questions, but that's all I have for you.
Questions? Thanks for coming up this evening. Thank you. Danny, thank you. Thank you for your staff.
Yeah.
You and Jason.
Call me. Hey, Greg, yeah.
So,
Okay, with a couple of things, NCK Tech is having a job and community fair, in case you haven't seen that. They're hosting that at the campus on August 26th. It's only from 11:30 to 12:45, so it's not a ton of time. But if your company is hiring, it's a good time to go up there. They're doing both a job fair and then a community fair, so we have anyone in the community that have things to offer, but mostly for job fair for you guys. I also, we do something in SVD, we nominate business for Business Appreciation Month. They posted that in the state of Kansas for the last several years. Last year they, I think maybe the last 2 years, they skipped it. So now they revamped it a little bit, now it's called To the Stars. And if you have a business that you think we would like to, we should nominate, please let me know. They're due August 31st. There are several categories, so business appreciation can be for retail, service, manufacturing, distribution, or hospital and nonprofit. And then this year they added 3 new categories, and I kind of like them. One's business innovation for an innovative business across Kansas. The other one is under 30 for young entrepreneurs, so I love that. And then the last one is welcome back. If you have left Kansas and you've returned to run a business back with you, they're going to recognize those people too. So they do them in by region, and so we're in the Northwest region, and so they get recognized here in our region. And then you go on to the state level, and we've had several that have competed on the state level. Cunningham's came into the top 2nd or 3rd place, and they do a big governor's award with them. So it's kind of a nice thing. If you think of someone that do August 31st, the application is pretty simple, and I can help them do that. But if you have a business in mind, let me know. Youth entrepreneurship, we are going to tentatively set that date for March 8th. March 8th, because I haven't finished it yet. But I think it's March 8th. I try and do like Dead Week or State Basketball Week, because usually Monday, Tuesday they don't play, usually. So I try and kind of do it that week. And I have new teachers this year, so I'm super excited. So I still have Kathy Harris from Lloyd High, and she teaches business. I have Cheryl German from Tipton. JC Tice is the new JAG teacher at Lloyd High, and JAG is the Jobs for America's Graduates. And there's several other places across the state that use the JAG classroom as their entrepreneurship or youth entrepreneurship, so I'm going to try that in JC's game. And then St. John's has an entrepreneurship class this year for the first time ever, so I'm going to go meet with them tomorrow. I sent them, which I've done this for several other schools, but I sent them pipe cleaners, and they had to create something with the pipe cleaner, and then tomorrow or Friday I'm going to go in and have them explain to me what they created, so we'll try that. And then for good news, Mitchell County Strong was nominated and has won a Leader of the Year for the Huck Boyd Institute. So Mitchell County Strong was profiled on the Kansas Profile magazine that Ron Wilson does. He does it in newspapers and he does it on the radio. And we were nominated and we have won. And so there's 7 categories, and so we won in the community service category, and just so you know, it's also value-added crops, value-added snack foods, specialty products, food marketing, and community betterment. So community service obviously fit us, and so there's a big luncheon here in a couple of weeks that we'll go and get to have more publicity on that.
That's great.
Very cool. Just keeps coming. I swear, like every month something pops up about that again. So. And then I have more at work session, but that's all I have.
We did discover Dollar Tree / Family Dollar.
So I really want to.
So everybody was right.
Because that's what Belleville, the Belleville Telescope said the same thing, and they were like, so how can you thought it was Dollar Tree? How can you thought it was Family Dollar? I guess everyone's right. So.
Oh, they get one too up there?
I did look it up. It is kind of a new concept. And so I still have no grand opening date, but someone did ask us, they do like production, it's a company that they brought in to help with the grand opening.
Grand opening package for all their.
Yeah, so they asked about flags, and so when I emailed her back, I was like, hey, what day is that? She doesn't answer. So maybe we'll find out.
Harvey might want to know. There hasn't been really that many vehicles out front, I don't think the whole team has moved in yet.
Well, if you look through the windows at the front, you can see there's a lot of stuff still to do on the inside.
Yeah, I bet.
Probably the same thing that
I had somebody ask me, is it half Family Dollar? Half
I know.
I said, no.
I know, but I thought that too, especially with the awning, like.
Yeah,
it's
Yeah,
very
it
green.
really looks.
It'd be nice if we got that with, like Hy-Vee and Ray's,
Yeah.
Dylan's. I mean, whoops, sorry.
I did look up
So is
some of
this-
the.
What is this? City of Lloyd Concordia. Really wasn't.
I don't take kindly to that.
I did look up some information if you haven't looked up. It is kind of interesting. It says Family Dollar does a lot more general products, and then Dollar Tree is everything's a dollar. So it's a combination of both. But they look fairly new. So I Google searched them, really were mostly in 2021.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a joint collaboration to see if they can improve business from both sides is what they're trying to do, so.
And Dollar Tree is actually a dollar, so that's at least different. I don't know, it should be interesting, but I think it looks like a Papa John's sign. It's red and green.
That'd be all right too.
I know.
They might get
I
that.
know. That's all I have.
Thanks, Ellen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on this evening, we'll go to Stuart Porter on the water treatment plant site plan review.
It's all done, right?
Okay, so, a couple weeks ago, we, presented for you I kind of tried to introduce at least some of our design team. There's a couple of guys that are on the design team I'd really like to introduce you to, but they were unavailable that day. You take one pass down. So I didn't want to, at that meeting, I didn't want to get too far into the weeds being online. The online meetings can be kind of clunky, and just trying to introduce everybody to council and vice versa, go and hit some of the highlights, show you that we are making progress and that a number of things have been done, but there are still certainly a number of questions to be answered and milestones to hit. One of those is talking about the site plan for this new building. This new building is, it's a large building. It's a little bit irregular shaped in the fact that it's kind of shaped like a backwards L. And that's just simply to be able to fit everything on that site. I've said from the beginning, and I still stand by it, that utilizing that site is very cost advantageous to the city, because while it may not look like it, there's a number of different pieces of infrastructure in the existing water treatment plant building that are able to be reused. The lab, the office space, the high service pump station, some of the electrical feed, and there's just a number of things that are worth salvaging or worth continuing to use, as well as the outside pre-sedimentation basin, the exterior clear well, and things like that. So I feel like this site is a good site, but it does present some challenges. And one of the challenges is the building is fairly big in order to fit everything on the second page inside the building. So the stuff that's on the second page is basically the information that was discussed at the previous council meeting. So the real question here is, in order to fit everything in the building, my proposal, my plan is to push the building to the south as shown on this drawing, to be about 3 feet plus or minus behind the existing back of curb. In this stretch of South Street is extra wide. I can't remember I didn't look up the number, but it's like
I'll
40,
pull it up here.
is it 47 feet wide
It's
from
not-
back of curb to back of curb? It's really, really wide. So what I'm proposing to do is put chemical storage delivery parking, so truck parking and also vehicular parking along the north side of South Street, and align the edge of that parking up with the continuation of South Street to the west. And South Street, even with this revised parking scenario, will be substantial, well, I shouldn't say substantial, but it'll be several feet wider than South Street is continuing on to the west. I think it makes sense. In order to accomplish this, we are proposing a 3-way stop at the intersection of South Street and Chestnut. I think that makes sense too. The site distance will be somewhat minimized. So bringing people to a stop, so it forces them to look all directions, I think makes sense. But I think that this is in my opinion, this is a good fit for the way the street is arranged in this area and the other infrastructure in the vicinity. The city's diesel tanks sit not far off the back curb on the south side of the road. The city's sludge pumping or sludge handling building that is a little further to the east on the south side of the road also sits not too far off of the edge of the road. If you look to the north of that intersection on Chestnut, the city's main substation, what do you call that thing? You call it the jungle. Yeah. So the jungle sits, the fence for the jungle sits 2 or 3 feet off of the curb. So I don't think that placing the building up against the existing back of curb is a significant deviation from the use of land in this area of town. But I'm open to discussions. But in order for us to move the work that has to go on inside the building, in order for us to finalize some of those things, we really need to know the dimensions of the building and what parameters we're working with. It is possible that we could lengthen the building a little bit and squish it together, but then we lose some access on the east side of the building. So I guess more than anything, I'm looking for some feedback from the council. Yes, this looks acceptable, this looks reasonable, or no, we think you need to go back to the drawing board because this is such a different thing that you've done in this part of town or even in town. So I would welcome questions, and I realize you may need to have a few days or weeks to digest this, but it's something that we have been talking internally about. How do we fit all of this equipment that is necessary for this project within the footprint that we have available at the water treatment plant building? Treatment plant site.
What's the difference of, I want to put up a Quonset shed, you want to get a variance from the setback from the street? What's the difference?
Well, this is zone commercial, first of all, so that really helps. There's no setbacks. It'd be kind of like your downtown streetscape, to where there's minimal, look at all your downtown buildings, right? They're all right on the sidewalk or right off the sidewalk or whatever. So it's really similar in that. So what we're doing then is just artificially creating some setback by pushing the street. We're saying, hey, is this street really a high traffic area? Probably not. You know what I mean? It really isn't. So we're going to artificially, move that street. Really the street now is really this, there's going to be a new gutter, if you will, right through here. So it's going to be actually about the same width, maybe even a touch wider than the street that continues to go west, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the...
If you could go back to Google Earth, you can kind of see what Jason just said, what I was trying to talk about before. South Street onto the west is...
That narrows down.
It's 20, what is it, Jason, like 20?
About 22 feet, I think, or something, or just depends on where you measure it and where the street actually is. Maybe 20 feet, 21 feet. 22 feet, I don't know.
And when we get done with what we're proposing, if I remember right, we're 26, 28 feet wide. We're wider than South Street is onto the west. This is not a real high traffic part of town, but
What are we gonna be to east of there?
so we are proposing to construct a concrete delivery pad. That would be the area that is striped on your drawing. And then further to the east, we would stripe the pavement for parallel parking.
Yeah, kind of towards down under, where people,
But
which is,
Ventures back.
which is what's happening all the time anyway. That's why
Yeah.
people parallel park. So it
Right.
really feels like, yeah, at first it feels like a little bit like, whoa, but then I think once it's done, it might feel fairly natural, to what's going on. You get the street to where the traffic will flow correctly. And again, I've driven by that street, it's kind of crazy because you really notice it because we put that big brand new patch of concrete down there for the big drainage pipe. And so I would drive by that once like, man, that's a big, beautiful street. But you know what I mean? There's just nothing on it, unless down under is busy, which we're not going to be down in that business, but I really kind of look at it to, again, how a lot of our other commercial buildings in that downtown area are sitting, even H Hardware on that one, on the east side is sitting even closer than what this building will sit when it's done. Probably on the front side are very similar. Would you say that, Stuart, on this part here?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly how close he sits to.
Yeah, it looks, just eyeball,
To
it's
Chestnut,
pretty
but-
similar here as that, so it's a change, but it kind of fits what's going on.
I think it makes total sense. I would have absolutely no problem with it.
Stuart, I just a quick question.
Yes.
Thoughts. That unloading of the chemical, does that have to be a containment load pad or just?
It does not. So the chemicals, some chemicals will be pumped. I was going to talk about this a little bit. So the way we're envisioning it, the chemical delivery truck will pull into the striped area. And in some place, or with certain chemicals will be pumped from the truck through an opening in the side of the building. It'll be either an overhead door or a pedestrian door. And they will fill chemical storage tanks inside the building. And then some chemicals are delivered in totes. Those totes would be offloaded using a forklift. So they will be picked off of the truck and moved into the building. So those three big squares that are shown on the drawing there are intended to be tote chemicals. Now that doesn't mean they have to be, but there's space allotted inside the proposed building for totes because of the amount of chemical that is anticipated to be used on a weekly or monthly basis that warrants that size of a chemical container. Does that answer? I mean, that's kind of
I was just kind of
around.
curious. Different industries have different regulations, so it's,
Sure.
thank you.
If it was a busier street, maybe it'd be an issue, but that I've never seen. Now, again, parking occasionally, but it's nothing continuous, I would say. So, yeah.
Looks like a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, utilizing it, that way gives you the maximum amount of space they need without having to pinch everything in there. Because you never have enough room, it seems like, no matter how you design it.
One thing that I have challenged our design team to try to pinch the building down as much as reasonable, and they've pushed back and they've said, we want to make sure we have plenty of space. So I am confident in telling you that I think there is enough room in this building for the various operations that need to take place. There's room for treatment expansion, there's room to maneuver chemicals and parts around, and there's also room to remove tanks or other things if necessary to get them out of the building and replace them. And that's one thing that as we have toured various water treatment facilities around the state over the years, that's one thing that we have seen doesn't always get designed into a building like that. I was in one 6 or 8 months ago where there was a chemical tank that would be about the size of this area, is round, and it was tucked clear back in the corner of the building. The only way to get it out of there would be to cut it out and put a new one in would probably involve taking all the wall girds and the skin off the building, which would be a good situation.
I've seen a couple retrofits where they had to cut the ceiling off so that they could lift it in and drop pieces of equipment because there was no other way to get this thing in place.
Stuart, back to the napkin here, it's about what, a 9,000 square foot building, does that sound about right?
I thought it was 6,500. It's been a while since I've looked at that, but I thought it was 6,500, 6,400, 6,500
Just taking the width,
square foot.
131 times 60, but maybe that's wrong. Maybe it's different than that.
Oh,
Plus, there's the top section too. It's not really that important, I just give kind of perspective of the
oh
size.
yeah, you're probably right. I may be getting this mixed up with another project. I mean, just another project on square footage, because I think you're correct.
So,
I shouldn't.
it's about 130 by 60, and then it's the 30 by 30. 30 by 30, kind of that little L part up there too, but just give you some perspective.
So the access road would go be
Right here.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because there's still some access, we're still gonna wanna have a loading dock back there. The high service pumps are actually, as you can see on this thing, I think this is kind of where those high service pumps are for the, pumping the water, from the clear well into the system or vice versa. I've never-
From the clear well
To the-
into the distribution.
Yes, to the tower, basically. And so we gotta be able to get those out. They're pretty substantial. So we'll actually want to put a crane in here, to get those out. It's easier than what we're doing right now, which is kind of funny. So, yeah, I mean, they're not crazy. Maybe 1,000-pound pumps, they're substantial in the basement. So we'll want to be able to get them carted out of here and out of here, just to have some access to that building. There'll still be some things that building will be used for, so.
Will there be a loading dock then? Or-
So there will not be a loading dock on the proposed treatment plant building, the new building. And the reason for that is there's no way to really back a truck up to it, other than if you pulled in parallel and backed up. That's a possibility, but then that disrupts some of the flow of equipment inside the building. So I've talked to Jason about this. In my opinion, I think a better scenario is to utilize that forklift to pick the totes and
Buy a
barrels
small
off the truck,
rubber tire,
wheel them into an overhead hook.
little electric or propane one or something, kind of what you guys have at your shop.
We can most of them just come in on common carrier and then normal freight with the totes and then they'll just set them on the back.
They certainly can, yes. And at least one of your chemical tanks is going to be sized large enough that it could receive a full tanker of chemical. But that's the chemical, it's calcium chloride, that we don't believe you're going to utilize a whole lot of. It's going to be big for the condition in which you need to remineralize your water, because your reverse osmosis sees most of it. And if you were to do that, it would require more chemical. But we believe through bench scale testing and other analysis that the bypass blending that we've been talking about from the beginning is going to be sufficient for remineralization and also for water quality, that you won't be using that chemical a whole lot.
Will those be fiberglass? Or
I believe they will. I believe most of these tanks will be reinforced fiberglass.
Are we gonna have to relocate any streetlights?
No,
I don't think they're on the other side, actually, if there's any.
I was
Yep, they're on
trying to
the,
think if there were.
power lines are all on the left, or the south side of the room.
I'm just thinking if we have a freeway stop, just might not hurt to make sure that intersection
Is
is
lit,
well-
yeah, there might be something.
And I'm just trying to think, I couldn't remember, so.
And if it were necessary, there could be a street light placed on the corner of the building if it was desired.
Yeah, one challenge that we'll have, yeah, they're on the
Yeah,
other
it's
side.
okay, there's-
Yeah. One challenge we'll have is this guy right here, they call it the water salesman or whatever, so, we don't quite have a solution for, it's pretty necessary, we push a fair amount of water through that, but we're gonna have to find a new home for that guy. So we kind of got some ideas we're tossing around, obviously. We got a little bit of railroad work to do. We've talked about down here, where we have our lift station. This lot is kind of in limbo. It's pretty much the railroad's area, but we don't really know what they use it for or whatnot.
We've got stuff on it.
And we got stuff on it, so we maintain it, so it might be a good spot to have a little drive-through, little deal. Again, it's just mostly, for the most part, it's contractors or farmers that are coming in to get water, so. But we'll figure it out. It's one of those detailed things that we'll figure out where to stick it. We don't really want to put it, we thought, to be cute, we put it on the side of the building, they can pull up in that same lane. The problem with that is it's a little bit too sloped. You know what I mean? If we were on flat ground, it'd probably be the ideal spot, you know what I mean? Just to kind of maybe put on the one end of the building or something, but it's just a little bit too slopey.
To that point, we have looked at that and we haven't graded it out yet. We're kind of pending reaction from everybody. But it may not be as sloped as we thought. So maybe there's an opportunity to do that, to incorporate it. Maybe. I would at least be cautious. We would have to figure out how we're going to coordinate chemical deliveries with people wanting to get water and those sorts of things. But there is a possibility there. So
we'll figure it out.
I think we don't close that door yet, but there's.
Just so you know, we are thinking about it.
Yeah.
We'll get something figured out.
So there may be a little more discussion on that point.
So I think this looks really good.
Okay. Since I'm here and it's probably easier to ask questions in person, are there things that people would like to discuss on this project? I may have answers, I may not. I could talk to you a little bit about the project schedule. And I will say that I don't have, there's some answers I don't have. I'll get into that here in just a second. But, one of the major steps that we have, that we are finished with is the bench scale testing process. So we took water quality water samples from the lake, exact same place we're going to be pulling water from. And our sub-consultant Tetra Tech did all of this bench scale testing in which they dosed it with different coagulants to confirm that we get good settling of the bad stuff in the water, the dirt, the settleable particles. And they dosed it with 3 different common coagulants. And one of them rose to the top, and that's all good news. But the takeaway from the bench scale testing is that using traditional settling technologies, traditional solids contact clarification, we're able to get more than sufficient settling of solids to protect our proposed membranes, which is very important. And the reason that, or where that comes back to roost with the city is we've determined that the existing pre-sedimentation basin that the city built back in 2006, 5, somewhere in there, it can be reused as a settling base, as a clarifier. It's going to require a little bit of retrofit, but the upside is that that's hundreds of thousands of dollars type savings to the project. So we're through the bench scale testing. Just last week, we got the final report on that. Here's where the bad news comes. Normally, with most water treatment plant projects, or historically, most water treatment plant projects, our next submittal to KDHE is called a design memorandum. It's like a 30% submittal in which we provide them the site plans, the guts of the plant, the preliminary mechanical, electrical, plumbing drawings, and all the things that are going to comprise the final project. KDHE has responded to us and they have said, hey, you're potentially changing the clarification step. You are potentially or likely changing the chemical, the coagulation chemical that you identified in your preliminary engineering report. keep in mind that the bench scale testing was not completed when the preliminary engineering report was completed. So they're requiring us to produce for them what they are calling a summary of changes document. It went in last week. So this summary of changes document basically identifies the different changes, the things that have changed from the preliminary engineering report that was approved by KDHE. I've never heard of going through this step. To my knowledge, nobody's had to go through this step. But KDHE is making us go through this step because there are some changes, and there's kind of a changing of the guard at KDHE, and they're getting much, much more difficult to deal with. So, on the heels of approval of the summary of changes document, then KDHE is going to make us update the waste stream summary review. That's also a document that we've been through with them. But once again, with chemical changes, they want to know where those chemical changes are going. The truth of the matter, and this is what's so frustrating, the truth is that for all intents and purposes, we're making the environmental concerns better. Less chemicals, all that sort of thing, but they still want to see that waste stream summary review document. On the heels of the waste stream summary review document, there will be a design submittal. And we will be working to have the design submittal ready to go once they tell us that we can submit it. They've told us, and this is a quote, they said, don't send us a design submittal until you've gone through these other two steps. So we are working through the process.
Did they give you a review timeline for those, or is it the typical, it's in the queue?
It's in the queue. I think that we will get them back quicker than some documents. We're looking at 12 weeks on some stuff. It's just ridiculous. It's really, really bad. But we will keep grinding the stone. I don't know what else to tell you other than we're trying to get things done. We did have, admittedly, we had a slowdown with this bench scale testing. The testing takes time, and then they have to compile the report. And there's probably a week or two lag in getting the report completed. But it's done, it's into KDHE's hands, and we should be moving forward. But just bringing you up to speed, some of these things, they just move slow. What's that?
Climate, health, and environment.
Yes. Yep.
So where would this put us as far as the timeline of breaking ground after everything else?
That's just such a hard question. If it was just the design stuff, we can crank that stuff out fast. And I say we're doing some of it, and we know what we need to do, pending approval by KDHE on these other steps. And Tetra Tech has a ton of horsepower. They can crank out the design, the nuts and bolts of the plant building, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing components that make up that building, and both sets of consultants integrating everything. We figured that stuff out, but I don't know when we're going to get back with this.
So we're potentially talking an extra year in this whole process,
No,
or 6 months? I mean, that's, I guess, where I was looking for.
I know. I don't think it's a year.
Okay.
I hope it's not 6 months, but it's months. I mean, it's just how long it takes to get stuff through the Department of Health and Environment.
Because my follow-up question to that is, obviously we've run into supply shortages and logistic issues with the solar plant project.
Yep.
All of us who work in industry know
Oh, yeah.
what the current situation is in the world.
Might actually be playing our hand to have this.
So
It could.
that's what I guess the question is, are we gonna?
I'll give you my gut on this. I don't think from a cost perspective, it's detrimental to us, what's going on off to the side with KDHE. Pipe suppliers, keep in mind, there are hundreds of tons of PVC pipe on this project, getting a water line from the lake to here. Our pipe suppliers are saying they think things are going to start softening after the first of the year, and they think we'll see things level out and get back back to something more like normal in the spring of 2022. So that does play into it. I think that it will. That's one of the markets, kind of like what we've observed with lumber. Lumber spikes and pipe has too, and then lumber starting to slowly taper off. I think that we'll see some of that.
Because I'm even thinking metal shortages for building a new building or components for all your pumps and all your other systems. I mean.
Oh yeah, well, and think about all the electronics that go into this.
Yeah.
There's a
Chips.
lot.
Right.
Chips
Yeah.
and PLCs and,
All those resins and pots and everything else that's needed.
Yeah, resin's a big issue right now.
yeah. So I don't know that from a financial perspective that it's a bad thing to,
Sometimes those delays are a blessing in disguise, even though they're.
That's where I was sort of
Yeah.
wondering if that was
They
sort of
can
figured
be.
into it.
but I can assure you, we are going to push as hard as we can with regulators to get, to get answers to the questions that we've got, because we've got 3 submittals that are yet to be approved so that we can move into final design. One of them is submitted, another one is ready to go, and the third one will be ready to go very soon, pending.
The waste stream,
good-
you're talking about the waste stream summary review, you guys haven't submitted that, but you will shortly, the waste stream summary.
We have not, they won't let us,
Oh.
they told us once again on that, don't submit that to us until we review the
I
drawing.
got you.
It's so weird, it never used to be like that, but it's the world we live in right now.
On the financing side, there's no penalties or anything. We have the money locked down and so if we're an extra 6 months, just let's go worst case scenario, even at 8 months, a year.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's gonna affect us as far as
So,
the amount that we have on finance. Okay.
Nope,
Yeah.
not at all.
we're actually already starting to draw on it, so that's the one thing, just so we don't beat up our water fund anymore, so. Yeah,
It is what it is, it's just.
yeah.
And we're trying.
Frankly, it's out of our hands. I mean, the only thing we can do, and I probably will at some point, start engaging Susan to start try to seem to help the last time. I really don't understand what the beef is. I feel like we get a little bit extra pinch than other people do for some reason, but it's the way it is. So we'll lean on the powers that be again. If we can't get traction, that's what we'll go. I don't want to do that just yet, but we'll.
Right, and I would agree with that. I don't think we want to do that just yet, because there are a couple of things that are included in the design or the changes, the summary of changes document that we really like to get KDHE to say yes to.
We want to play nice.
The way it is right now, because there are some significant cost savings that we think are totally justified, included in that. And we just want to, we'd like them to just nudge them to get us the answers that we need. So, any other questions? I mean, I'd be happy to, I think if you gave me a month, I could have the water line portion ready to bid. Now, that doesn't mean KDHE approval, but I'm just saying, it's very close to being ready to go.
Having gone through this initial set of changes, obviously I have to present a summary. Do we feel that we're primarily past where there would be any additional changes moving forward in the design and service process? If we're approved with what we have currently?
Okay, so if we get through the summary of changes document, and there's nothing major in that, and we're able to submit our full design memorandum, I feel really good that there are very few additional major hiccups or changes that we should expect to see. I feel very comfortable with the sedimentation process. I feel incredibly comfortable with the membrane process, because one of the changes that we made, back to kind of circle back, the original preliminary engineering report assumed a 30% bypass of the reverse osmosis equipment. And the reason for that was to remineralize the water so that it's stable and to minimize the costs associated with remineralization using trucked-in chemicals, because the chemicals are there. It's calcium, magnesium, and stuff like that. So I feel really, really good about that. But one of the changes that's included in this plan is upsizing a few components so that if we got into really nasty influent water, let's just say there was a blue green algae breakout at the lake or something like that, And the water that's coming to us has some really bad dissolved organics in it or something like that. We can reverse osmosis every single drop of water that goes through this plant. We just have to recognize that we're going to spend more money in remineralizing it so that it doesn't become corrosive in our piping network and in our homes.
Like it is now.
It's not now, it's just dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've had to replace every sink in the deli because of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's one of the great, I guess, one of the improvements that have been made as we've gone through this process. We have determined that for a minimal amount of additional dollars, we can provide that flexibility to change the percent of bypass from 30% down to 0%. With, very little infrastructure improvement. It'll be an operational thing that the operators will have to be trained on, but they'll have the tools to test the inflow of water and make adjustments as they need to. And I kind of said this in our virtual meeting, and I didn't want to, toot Tetra Tech's horn too loud. But we mentioned a guy's name, his name's Jarrett Kinsler. We're talking one of the premier membrane guys in the United States. I mean, he's incredibly bright. And he's on this project. He just was at a trade show the night of that meeting. So just a really good guy, super bright. He's really into the minutia type stuff, the stuff that affects membrane life, operational costs. So
What is the average on the membrane?
that really varies. You'll hear horror stories of 2, 3, 4 years. Most, I mean, we're planning for our planning documents called for, I think, 7. I didn't bring that with me. I think 7 year replacement. I know of,
Clay Center,
Clay Center got 10.
yeah. or
and
more
I think
even.
Allen got 12.
Yeah, I was gonna say, one of those got more.
Reason
One
I
of
know
them.
that is my store owner sits on the public utilities.
Oh, does he?
So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what he said. He said, we got 10 years because we've been doing a lot of talking. And I was telling him, he said, it sounds almost identical to what they do on the RO and everything else.
That's all built in the O&M costs.
Yep. But then, yeah, you're right. It is built into the O&M cost, but it is really important to protect those membranes, and that's why the bench scale testing is a very important step. And confirming the type of coagulant, and we've determined one of the 3 coagulants that were tested really rose to the top. It's just that much better, and it requires a lower dose, and operational cost wise, it's pennies of difference. So it's definitely the right choice. It will preserve membrane life and things like that.
Clay Center well water, is theirs coming from wells, their water?
Yes, I believe so. There are wells that sit on the Republican River.
But it's not, say, river. pumped out?
No, it is not surface water. And that's one difference that we've got, that I feel really good that we're seeing really good settling results out of that bench scale. So, any other questions? I know I'm monopolizing up your time, I apologize for that. But
Stuart's fault.
Very interesting.
No, this is a good,
Yeah.
good discussion, so.
Okay. Well, thank you. And if you do have any questions, follow me, Jason, and we talk fairly briefly.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on with the meeting. We'll go to the consent agenda for August the 4th, and appropriations 8B. Okay, motion to pass in its entirety.
So,
Then move by
Stuart's
Councilman
fault.
Bidwell to approve the consent agenda in its entirety. Do I have a second? Second by Councilman Greenberg. Any discussion? No discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is ordinance 2291, Kettle Coffee LLC special event, September 11th.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Graybon, we approve ordinance 2291, second by Meyer. Any discussion? No further discussion, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next item, ordinance 2292 for the kettle for special event for September 24th.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Adolph that we approve ordinance 2292 for September 24th, kettle. Second by Councilman Meyer. Any discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Moving on to resolutions this evening, resolution 2021-9, Housing Authority Board appointments. You have a handout here for Jackie Larson to 2023 and Nancy Thielander for 2024. Motion by Councilman Graybon to approve the appointment. Do I have a second? Second by Councilman Meyer. Any further discussion? No further discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. We'll move to the formal actions. The first formal action is the emergency light authorization. I don't know if Katie wanted to speak on that just for a minute.
Yeah, I will. This has, I guess I don't have a copy of it in front of me, but this came about, I can't remember, I guess, under how, but essentially I assisted the county attorney with creating this document. I think years ago, the sheriff was just kind of handing out permission and handing out emergency lights, so that's actually not allowed by statute. The county commissioners actually decide who in the county can have an emergency light on their vehicle, and so we put together this application. Part of the application process is for the governing body to approve it. So obviously we have a volunteer fire department, and so the chief is requesting, he has completed an application, we just didn't want to put his personal information in the packet, but chief is requesting that he be allowed to have one on his vehicle. So it won't be everybody in the department or anything like that, it's just Chief LaCoe. So.
I did have a question regarding that.
Yeah.
So does that mean that anyone who previously was just authorized by the sheriff to have one will now have to resubmit and go through the process to have official submission?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we will probably see additional ones of these come through?
I don't know. I don't
I don't know
know.
if we really have anybody out there doing it right now.
That's what I didn't.
Yeah.
Aaron told me he thought there might be 3 of them.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
well, they have to come in
Yeah.
and we'll have to take action every time.
Everybody has to get approval here, and then they go to the county commissioners because they've got to have all those documents and insurance and things. So, yeah, it'll come here first.
No, I think it's important our chief of police does have the ability to do this.
Fire chief, yes.
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
no, chief, yeah.
Yeah. So this was let Tom sign the
Yeah, this is loud.
application.
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Fremont to approve the mayor to have authority to sign off on first responder emergency light authorization. Have a second. Second by Councilman Adolph. Any discussion? I just add that I think in this application, the individuals have to have an increased amount of liability insurance at their expense.
Saw that too.
Defensive
Cover
driving,
that.
yeah, all kinds of
Doesn't
stuff.
affect
Clean
us.
license.
Yeah, it's not just for fun.
So, those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next item is a special event license for Mitchell County Farm Bureau at Chautauqua.
So, I'll let Tony have it.
Second.
Let Tony have
You're gonna
it.
have to move fast. I think to see this guy. Motion by Councilor Beaver.
Well, that was the flag.
You don't want to.
I was drinking beers. And it is the 19th, not the 18th, so
Motion
Oh, the
by-
days wrong? Okay.
Motion by Councilman Geeler to approve the special event license for Farm Bureau. Second by Councilman Graybon. Any discussion? No further discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Motion to adjourn.
I so moved.
Moved by Councilman Meyer that we adjourn. Second by Councilman Geeler. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. We'll stand adjourned. We'll go into the work session. Katie, anything?
No, no,
Yeah,
okay.
thank you very much. Jason, okay, we'll turn it over to Jason for the city manager review.
So this should be pretty old hat. I did put on the table right now the paper version. I'll send out tomorrow. I just didn't get it finished today. My year review I usually do, so still working on that document. But I have a little extra motivation because I have to present at Rotary next week, so I'm trying to get it all done. But so I'll send that out to you. I'll send an electronic version of this in case you want to do it on Adobe. Just remember to save it. If you're halfway through, right, Andrew? Yeah. So because I've done it too many times. I'm like, oh, dang it. So it doesn't auto save, but it is fillable. But just make sure you save it if you decide to come back to it. So just FYI, you can do either one. It doesn't matter. I think we've either handed them in to Tom before, if Tom wants them, or you can give them to Mandy, we'll give them to Tom. I mean, he usually
Give
just,
it to me or Jason.
we'll compile it.
And you want it by next meeting?
It doesn't matter. I mean, we'll shoot for that. We usually end up chasing a few. I understand everybody's busy. It's not that fun to do. So if it isn't, I'm in no rush. It's just on this calendar. So I just try to get it started so we kind of keep it going. So I actually can't believe how fast it seems like we just talked
It
about
seemed like
this.
yesterday we just did this.
So I don't know where 2020 went, but so anyway, so we'll shoot for September 1st, but no hurry. So just do what you can. If you have any questions, or can't get some over, just let me know. I'll do a self-review too. I usually send that out to you guys, so I'll try to do that. I'll try to get it all done by Friday. Let's just put it that way and get it out to you guys. So that's that process. Pretty easy. Moving on. So this is kind of a new topic. I don't know how much has been discussed in the council over the years, even before I was here or not, but we've done a lot about what we're going to talk about here shortly. Heather's going to kind of take the lead on the presentation here shortly. But I'll just kind of set the table basically, and that's the concept of a land bank. So just as a reminder, the city, we've taken on a lot of land and blighted properties or condemned properties, those types of things, kind of the properties nobody wants. They're kind of out there. So we've handled them, but kind of the more we've studied and the more we've talked about it, we may not be doing it, or we're probably not using the most efficient vehicle to do that. So probably in the last 2 or 3 years, we've probably done a half a dozen properties, just houses even torn down. So we kind of wanted to introduce this concept of land bank. Several of our neighbors, a lot of communities in Kansas have done these, and it just might be the appropriate vehicle for that. So Heather put together a nice kind of a really high-level PowerPoint that she'll get through to kind of answer questions. Hopefully you saw the information in your packet. If you haven't had a chance to read it, even after tonight, go ahead and read it. It's a pretty easy read. Once you understand the concept, it's pretty easy. It's nothing big and scary. So I'll get the PowerPoint up here for Heather.
I made you a really pretty
Yeah,
PowerPoint
she
because
did.
I knew it was going to be a late night, so and it has 18 slides, which you don't really need. Okay. So land bank presentation. So what does a land bank look like? I put pretty cartoons in it. You see good stuff. All right, so land bank is a government agency, nonprofit entity, so it can be either. It's focused on, not a conversation, the conversion,
Yeah.
whoops, of vacant, abandoned, tax delinquent properties. So it can be any of the above. And then somehow we put them into productive use alongside long-term community goals. And so we already have some of the goals up there. Most vacant, abandoned properties are rejected by the private market. So that's one of the things that we really want to make sure that we stress. These aren't things that are out there.
I'm not trying to compete with the private market. Yeah.
Exactly. Because they're things that people can't buy either because the repairs are too high, the taxes are delinquent, or there aren't clear titles on them, clouded titles, which Katie will hopefully talk about some of that, or we'll talk about that later. But it makes it exceed the fair market value, so it's not something that people can purchase. So I have lots of examples, but I have one. Someone wants to buy the property next to their house, and there's $30,000 worth of back taxes on it. So they're not going to buy it. You can't buy it because if they would buy it, they'd have to pay the $30,000 back taxes. So why do you need a land bank? Because communities are paying for that. So I have lots of examples, but the one with the house that wants to buy the property next to it is a prime example. So it's depleting our property tax because we're obviously not even gathering the taxes on the $30,000, which is a whole other story that we'll talk about. So it decreases your property values. It's obviously a safety and fire hazard, and it's draining our local tax dollars. So they are created, and they are fairly new. I mean, I looked at some of the legislation, and it's fairly new into Kansas. I think there's 250 maybe across the nation at this point, so it's not huge. But, sorry, they're created to strategically acquire properties and convert these into liabilities and excess. So why does it matter? Because the spiral of life continues. Obviously, if you have property beside you that is terrible, then it's rolling over into your property too. No action makes it worse, obviously, and we have little room for economic development. So like I told you guys last week, you know, I have several people, but I have one that's pretty anxious that would like to look at some properties downtown. We've talked about, I think I'm up to 17 properties, and he's only been able to see 3 of those. So it hinders economic development, it hinders community development too. So in short, this is probably my favorite definition, and I've looked at lots. They're intended to acquire title to these problem properties, eliminate the liability, transfer the properties to new responsible owners in a transparent manner, I really like that too, that results in outcomes consistent with our community-based plans. So it plays along with everything that we're already doing. So I really like that explanation. So how does it work? Katie and Jason and Mandy will talk about it a little bit more, but this is the general part. You acquire the property, you eliminate the liabilities, whether that means it's a clouded title or back taxes, then you transfer it to responsible owners based on what we've already planned. I also like this little map. I did not make this, but I thought this was really nice. Again, just a very overview of how it works. So either demo, which we already have been doing, but you can demo, and then it still has a use because it's either a green space or someone can buy it. Or it could sell the property for an affordable homeowner or to rent it if we would decide we would like to hold on to properties and lease them. So what happens to them? Again, they're residential home sales, so which I don't know that I see that happening as much as lot sales to adjacent homeowners, and that is what we've done already. Or commercial property sales. Obviously, this would be my push. And I have, just as a side note, I contacted Mark on Mr. Noah, on August 12th, so just last week, and asked him for the list. The commissioners have pushed on the county attorney a little bit to talk about properties with back taxes on them. If anyone read the paper tonight, you'll see we're at $254,000. Obviously, some of those will get paid. The ones that they've really pushed the county attorney to go after are just the ones that are 3 years and 4 years or more, so older ones. And I think there's about 120 properties maybe. Mark did call me back, told me that he's getting lots of calls, that what had happened is that he had sent out a letter as the county attorney saying, you didn't pay your property tax or won a sheriff's auction. Katie's talked to him, I've talked to him, he's still kind of planning on doing something this fall. We have not had one. We've had one in the 10 years that I've been here. We've had a bank foreclosure auction. We've only had one. And so he is pushing on a lot of those, and I have talked to property owners who have conveniently come up and said, hey, guess what, there's something going on. So I know he is. He sent the letter hoping that someone of them would get paid, and then he will send me the list. I'll call him again this Friday. I'll give him a week, and I'll call him again this Friday to kind of see what the list is and see how many commercial properties are on there. From the list today in the paper, there's several, quite a few. So how does it work? So I was getting really tired because I put the superpowers in there. So most land banks have special powers that enable them to undertake these activities more effectively and efficiently than other public entities, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But when they're executed, land banks can resolve some of the toughest barriers and return land back to productive use. Again, it's not in productive use now if it's back taxes or it's got repairs or it's not being paid. So they can obtain the property at a low cost or no cost. Obviously, we're getting some quick claim deeded to us. One of the things that I love and why it works for us is that we could hold the land tax free. So taxes would not accumulate on the land. So say someone give us a property, taxes will not accumulate for the municipal government or however we set that up in the future. So it allows us to hold it until we could turn it, whether we demo it or sell it or whatever. Clear title, extinguish the back taxes, that's also the benefit.
And that's a big deal for us. I mean, if you think about the line out, again, we've recouped some of this and done pretty well, but for a lot of these properties we've either taken the deed to or not, there's usually $800 to $1,500 worth of back taxes on them that we're, you know, part of it's ours, you know, part, even with this, we extinguish it, part of that tax, you know, what we talked about a couple meetings ago, a third of that would come off of our revenue in a sense, but it's definitely a more efficient way. A blighted or condemned or a tough property should really affect all the taxing entities. I mean, it's useless to no one. So why should our city taxpayers, help fund that backfill for school or county? No offense to them, but in that scenario. But hopefully, again, it clears it, helps us to get it back to where it is, a viable property, helps the whole neighborhood, but it produces that tax revenue naturally. So
through a land bank, and you acquire the property,
sure,
past taxes are not forwarded on, they're forgotten about.
They go away.
They go away. So, but like the city is the land bank now, we won't have to pay the back taxes on it.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we hold the deed to the property, we don't have to pay taxes on that property,
Yes.
but of course, the
Yep.
purchaser
Yeah.
will then assume the tax roll.
Once it's back to tax, yes, exactly. It loses that status once it goes to private ownership or something again. So, the big thing, and again, we'll probably talk about this in here somewhere, maybe Heather's already covered it too, is the goal of the land bank isn't to hold property. We don't want to be, and I really kind of hate the word bank. We're not First National Bank, or we're not, it's just what they call it. But, we're just a land holding device that is more efficient for us as taxpayers and as a governing body to deal with them. So to get them turned right back around to you or to me or some commercial business, to get them back to productive use.
So the only thing that cannot be eliminated is special assessments, and we don't have a lot of them in town, so it shouldn't be an issue. But for example, if there's a street assessment on a property, that does not go away, but it can be held, and then
we can still recoup that.
We wouldn't have to pay it while the
Wouldn't have
land
to pay
bank.
it, but then the new
The
owner
new owner
would take over
take
that
over.
assessment.
Right, so that's the only thing, but taxes, all that,
Yeah.
like I said, we don't do.
And there's nothing saying that we don't still sell it for, you know what I mean? Like, it may still have some useful value, and
Absolutely.
we're not gonna just give these things away, either. You know what I mean? So because I guess I'm hoping I'm not speaking out of turn there. So there's, it just gives you a lot more flexibility, and upfront you don't have to get dinged so hard. Right?
Yeah, and I don't know, Heather, if you're gonna discuss this, but disposition of property, we don't have to put it out for bid. We don't have to take the lowest or best or lowest bidder. We can choose, or not we, the board, the land bank chooses who gets the property and how and
Yeah, I
what
think
price.
her last point kind of said,
Yeah.
negotiate sales based on the highest bid, but also on the outcome
Yes.
that most closely aligns with community need. You know what I mean? You don't want to, if the lot next door to XYZ business makes sense for XYZ business, take that on and actually put something in there. That's probably the thing to do, as opposed to somebody just wants to speculate and it just sits there and grows weeds again. Then we didn't accomplish anything. So
So the land bank board would probably require, a plan. They need to show that they have financing. If they say, well, I'm gonna put, a business there, well, you're gonna probably have to prove that you can do that and that you can sustain the property. So that's one advantage as well. Whereas right now, we're kind of, well, we usually only get one bid, but
yeah,
when we put them out there, it's a little bit different, so.
There's several of our neighbors that have a great application process that works with it, so,
Yeah.
People are interested in it. And, it has been several years since we've had a sheriff's auction here, but one of our other communities has one, and sometimes people will buy a property for $50, and we've been left properties because no one bids on them. And then we're still paying the taxes on them, so this would eliminate that. So if properties don't go for sale or we buy them as a land bank, then at least we can put them in the land bank and it's not going to accumulate more taxes until we get them sold.
it's a much more efficient holding tank or zone or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
So our properties have been owned up in the North Campus, so we're paying taxes on those. So those would be something that we can throw in the land bank.
There are towns that have done stuff like that.
And we
Yep.
could,
Junction City.
Yeah.
It was one of the articles in your paper. Obviously, they did a lot of that because of the military base. It sounds very similar to ours on a much smaller, much larger scale. That's much smaller, but yeah, that's.
And the delinquent tax roll.
Mhm.
Does that automatically give you the right to put it into the land bank? I mean, how does the land bank acquire?
Sure, that's a good question.
So property, sheriff's auction, if it would go to sheriff's auction, the land bank would have the opportunity to buy it prior to the sheriff's auction, but then we would be responsible for the back taxes. taxes.
So the land bank could buy it for the tax
They could.
against it.
A lot of them are donated, and you can tell from what we've had already, I mean, they've already been donated. Obviously, the North Campus was all donated back to us. The quitclaim deed that we just did was donated to us. And that's where a majority of them happen.
The Paget properties.
Yeah.
Paget properties, yeah.
And this is probably getting a little bit further out in the weeds. Obviously, tonight we're trying to just educate and garner some interest. But Katie's done a lot of research, not to steal her thunder on this, but with Pittsburgh, Kansas, I believe, and they've got a really, I'm all about not recreating a wheel here, but they've got a pretty good set of policies. First of all, what they will and won't take, and why, and how, all kind of the same questions you're asking, Tony. But then also kind of an acquisition policy and a donation application, you know what I mean? Again, it's not smart to just take anything, you know what I mean? Like, it can also be a huge liability and a huge concern, so.
Yeah, all doesn't exist, but guess what, there's
There's a big
there's
gap.
stuff right here
Yeah.
that nobody wants.
Right.
So that's something that, if we choose to move forward, us as staff, but then also eventually the land bank board, for lack of a better word, will really model a lot of stuff. And again, probably taking stuff from communities that have successful programs. But that's what I was really impressed with. It's not, right now, the reason why this is coming up is we're kind of doing this, but we're just kind of doing it willy-nilly. And we've had some success, but this is really kind of taking this to a mature level. It's kind of maturing our process and using the actual vehicle that's been established since, 2009?
09 is what it
To do this, and coming up with a pretty set, so we're doing it the same way all the time and not just kind of flying by the seat of our pants, with it. So.
Yep, and it follows, like they said, it's not silver bullet, and I love this. It follows things that we've already done. So I put in place things that we've already done. Obviously, we have code enforcement that does a great job. We already have smart planning. We have planning commission, economic community development. We have the facade improvement program, which is the loan program that helps with the improvement of your outside of your building in downtown. We have neighborhood revitalization program. Obviously, that's huge. We already have a demolition program. We have a sidewalk program. And hopefully at some point we'll have an effective tax collecting and enforcement. So I think we're getting closer to that. Obviously, if he's doing a tax sale, we're getting much closer. Are we competing with private market? Because this might be something that you get asked. You really aren't. I've read, and they keep saying that it's honestly the opposite, because we're taking properties that really aren't on the market in a fair market value setting right now, because if they were, they wouldn't be there, so we're taking properties that are problem properties that the private market has rejected, and then somehow most of them have serious legal and financial barriers, clear titles and financial barriers, and that detracts all your investors. And so a land bank's established to address the inventory of these problem properties and convert them. I feel like it's just like a cleaning thing.
Yeah, I'm just saying that we're like a washing machine.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Wash it, put it back out in the private market,
and then you can sell.
again. So.
Yeah. I didn't want to say laundering, but that's
Yeah.
what it feels like. I mean, you really are like cleaning the property.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really say, obviously with some of the stuff that talked about the last few months, this is not like a land grab or something like that. We're really, land bank, it's really a last resort, you know what I mean? Which is kind of what we've been doing. I can't keep saying that, but we really don't want to have to deal with stuff. So it's really dealing with like exactly the ones the private market just rejected or just really needs help to kind of use this tool to clean it up so that we can make it viable, recondition it.
I think I only have one more. Yep, when to use them. Large inventory of vacant and abandoned properties, which we don't have a large inventory, but we do have some. Properties with little to no market value, that's probably the biggest one. Properties with delinquent taxes, that's what we're going to see here after in the paper tonight. If you didn't see it, it's an entire page. Properties with title problems, that's got to be Katie, because I don't understand that, but evidently there are a lot of properties with title problems. And then it just allows it to go to auction for sale of tax foreclosed properties. And then there are public entities created by local ordinance. Phew, Katie! I was going to put your picture on here.
Which one's Katie?
I know. I added the Avengers because they make me very happy.
That's my
She'll
son's
be that
favorite.
But I was going to put you right here. All right, her turn.
Okay, so real quick, just process here, kind of what we're thinking. This is established by Kansas statute, so it's really clear. You have to pass an ordinance. Part of that ordinance is kind of setting up this board, and so we're going to meet again and kind of flesh that out, but we'll have to figure out who's going to be on the board. If the board is appointed by the city council, the board can be the city council. I'm not seeing that that's real common though. Typically it's various people with different interests in the community. So that's kind of where we start, and then it's a matter of setting up those policies. If you are really interested in this, I do encourage you to go to the City of Pittsburgh and their website. They have a whole page just about their land bank. Their available properties, you can click on them on their GIS website, and it shows you where they're at. It's very comprehensive. I've actually been in touch with their economic development person down there, so she's offered to help us out in whatever way we need. But yeah, I guess we kind of went through everything as far as legally. It's the tax abatement is big, the title issues. We will, as a land bank, have to file actions to quiet title. But honestly, it's really just a legal mechanism that usually folks don't, $1,000 usually is what they have to pay to hire an attorney to do that, and they just haven't been able to do that. So we would do that, file quiet title actions, get title cleared, which again should help properties move a little bit more.
Heather, the nearest town is Mankato.
Mankato does like a quasi.
Yes,
It's not
yes.
quite exactly, but yeah.
Yeah, they had a big push here a few years ago to get one started, and I think kind of died out. Now they're kind of getting it back going again. But Mankato does have one. They're becoming a lot more common kind of around, but it's really only mechanism has been in place since '09, so kind of new, but it's really a great, like you said, we're kind of doing it, but we're having to pay those taxes is the biggest thing. And as far as funding, I think there might be some grant opportunities. Obviously, when we sell properties, all that money, this is its own entity. This is not, the city of Beloit is not holding title to these properties. It's the Beloit Land Bank, or whatever you decide to call it. It's its own entity that has its own budget, has its own board, has its own, kind of like your library or housing
It'd be great if
authority.
it's self-sufficient.
Yeah, it's really the only thing that you guys do is you look at their budget, you approve it every year.
Point the people on it.
Yep, and then but it gets audited, just like the library and some of these other quasi-governmental boards that we have. So,
So all positions are appointed, there's no,
yes.
Some of them have an advisor, like sometimes the economic development person has
Yes.
an advisor.
So they'll have,
Like a non-voting member who just attends.
Sometimes that's what I've seen.
you'll have employees that will, in the statutes actually lay out, and you have a chairperson, things like that. But yeah, you'll have employees
Kind of a
that
staff
will be
person.
non-voting, kind of like we do for planning commission already.
So it'd be like municipal entity.
Yes, quasi-municipal. It's just going to be the city of Beloit. Yes, that's a important part because we could make it bigger, but I don't think that's our plan at this point. We're the ones starting it. We're just going to make it just for the city. And so it will go, you guys will be the governing body rather than the county, for example. So
Copper City is also looking at doing something. So I think there will be more than one. I hope there will be more than one in the county.
That would be a question that I did a little reading when I saw what you sent. There have been some instances where counties have fought back against the cities who wanted to do this because there is now sort of, for lack of a better term, a power exchange where the county had the power because they're the ones with the tax lien against these properties, and now the cities are coming in and sort of swooping in and removing that. Do we know, have we talked with the county at all about what their thoughts and opinions are regarding the land bank situation?
Yeah, not just in a very high, this is going to go to them also.
Okay.
I wanted to see if it was even something we were interested in before I started to push it, but I'll take Katie's name out and probably some of the pictures, but even though they didn't get that. So yes, I'm going to do SVD tomorrow actually. So I meet with one of the commissioners in the morning, and then I'm going to talk to SVD about it tomorrow. Who knows for funding wise? I mean, there's some grant opportunities. Honestly, our Blue Cross Blue Shield Pathways grant, there's some dollars in there that we can use towards land banks. So there's dollars there. I honestly think Hanson would be pretty supportive of it. And then we'll talk to SVD. And most of them don't start out with a bunch of money.
No, they
They just need some seed money to mostly pay fees.
Yep.
So that's kind of how it starts.
Yeah. Right now, it's been really the taxpayers have been sticking their necks out to deal with these the last couple of years. So this just kind of moves it a little bit and makes it more, like I said, more efficient vehicle to deal with these properties. And hopefully, eventually, it's just kind of self-sustaining.
Right.
You know?
Right.
so basically downside at all, I mean, can't really see, I mean, it's a win-win situation.
The only, I talked to the city attorney for Mankato, and he was just kind of picking his brain about it, asking him, and he said, yeah, he said the only thing is, like anything else, he said, and this kind of happened with them, like I said, is they weren't meeting every month, they weren't staying on top of things, and it just kind of died out. He said, even if you don't have any business, that board needs to meet every month, at least review policies, review whatever, review properties, potential properties every month, just to make sure that it's kept alive, because if you get to a point you don't have any properties and your board member, how things that can happen. So we just have to make sure that it stays viable. It's the biggest.
So how is the land, is it like the board, I'm driving down the street, whoa, what's this,
We'll put like a sign out there.
yeah, I mean, it's,
Most of
Places do, yeah. We'll have a
Yeah, we would probably, put it on a website or something, a list, but that would all be public information.
Yeah, put it on the
I mean,
GIS.
because, I guess too, is it just goes straight off the tax roll? Or how is it, or just a
Well,
blank
the
set
board-
abandoned?
Yeah, the board would decide kind of what the policies and how to approach and how to acquire properties. A lot of it's going to be donation. They're going to approach us, I would guess.
I would think so too.
I don't
But
want
then-
any words out of my hair, you have it.
And I get that a little bit when I've been calling like the commercial properties that I'm talking about for this business. I have several that they really just need a way to get rid of it, basically.
Yeah, it's kind of the property that we acquired downtown. It was kind of almost a relief situation.
It
to
is.
The vehicle, and probably we would start smaller, you know what I mean? Like some of these land banks are pretty sophisticated and they can do all sorts of crazy things. We don't want to be overwhelmed or inundated either, but, so we'll probably go with the very similar format of what we're doing right now. You know what I mean? We're comfortable with how it's working and that's probably the direction, start small, we can always adjust it as we go, but
And again, we would have the board would have the ability to
yes,
walk away from any property, to not take
yes.
property, because I think that's big too.
That was a follow-up I was wondering, because again, two things I heard about were, as far as the way we would structure it is, any major changes to the policies of it would have to be approved by the city council. So they would come with a bylaw change request or a policy change request, and we would then have to make the change to it. Is that correct?
It's not specifically in the statute, but I mean,
Probably a
we can
best
put that in the
practice.
ordinance as kind of best practice.
Because
Some
just
required,
as
but-
a sort of a check and balance. And the
Yeah.
other thing I've seen in some cases is they've actually put a limitation on the size of the dollar value, or however you want to phrase it, that the land bank has a max cap to require. So that you wouldn't see a city which is dying where the city owns 50% of the town because the town is dying. And I'm not saying we are, I'm just, they put that other check in place, and if it's ever exceeded, again, the city council would have to approve to allow, say you're purchasing a corporation's property because of whatever's happened. I mean, so if business goes bankrupt, that could be a huge property acquisition by a land bank, potentially. So I just,
Be some thresholds in there, some
again, there's a
limitations.
lot of really interesting articles out there
Yeah,
about
there
how
is.
some of these are functioning. I agree, a lot of them are more recent, but these are some of the quote-unquote exceptions that people have said, because there was nothing in place when this happened, you didn't know.
Things
that
to
was
watch
coming.
out for.
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah,
So-
because if your land bank goes, you decide to dissolve it, or it goes away, or something happens, that all becomes city property.
Yeah.
Right.
So you don't want to be held with,
Go right back.
I mean, we're not a small
Right.
dying town, but a little town wouldn't want to be stuck with.
Yeah,
it.
Exactly. If an industry closed for some reason, or something,
Right.
I just would want to make sure that however it's designed, I love the idea, I just want to make sure we have some of these checks and
Yeah,
balances.
I could even see where it's a maximum amount of holding that you could have at any given time.
Yeah.
Number one, then number two, there's probably a threshold that you could, as a board, approve. Anything beyond that has to go through council. So, your big
Right.
business comes up, hey, it probably makes sense to put it to the land bank. Obviously, we'll know what the conditions are at the time, but it's a $500,000 property.
Right.
If I need to go through the governing
Right.
body, make sure that, so I could see some of those. I think that we'll research that and find those best practices. But yeah, I really want to, we're probably gonna start pretty small. You know what I mean? I mean, we're doing $50,000 a year right now, maybe, well, not even that,
And another
$10,000, $20,000 worth of properties right now a year. And then,
How many board members?
We get to decide that. So Chanute has 3, Mankato has 5, Pittsburgh has 7, so we'll kind of look around and see.
And as a point of clarification, they still would not be able to change the zoning of a property that is acquired. That would still have to go through, because that's sometimes a question that people have is, okay, the city's acquired it, now they can do whatever they want with it. No, it still has the same zoning in place, it would have to be
That's-
changed, correct?
Yeah, that's a good question, because some of this, you know, you may have a developer come in, and so that, I will certainly look into that to see how that would, what that would look. Like I said, I think we're thinking starting small, but that certainly could come up.
Yeah, commercial becomes residential in a
Yeah,
certain
I think
area,
it's
or
gonna
vice
want to
versa,
follow that
or
process.
mixed use or something like that.
Yeah, I think you would still want that process. It's just a question of, does the developer get to request it before or after
Ownership.
acquisition from the land bank? So
You hate to make a change and then the acquisition doesn't go through, and then you have a property that's zoned weird. 'cause-
You probably just make the rezoning conditional. and-
Right,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a great idea, just,
Very much so.
Okay, we'll keep working.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah.
thank you.
Anything else, anyone? We'll stand adjourned. Great meeting. Yep.